Hello to all the folks out there in YouTube land. Today we're doing a video. Me personally, I just finished watching The Keepers. Wow. Yeah, wild. But then again, as I was watching it, I was like, well, the Catholic Church, kind of no surprise there. But it still was actually very horrific and shocking, what was going on over at this Keough school over in Baltimore. I mean, yikes. Um, you know, I always have had some issues, obviously, with the Catholic Church, and I mean, and obviously the Catholic Church has had its problems throughout history. I mean, for number one, the corruption in the Catholic Church has been an issue for many hundreds of years. As you know, King Henry VIII, for his own selfish reasons, was able to secede from the See of Rome, in a large part because there was a lot of people who were willing to go along with him because there was so much widespread corruption in the church, and so not much has changed, to be honest. So when you look at this, I mean, there's a lot of stuff in this documentary that just screams out, for attention. You know, particularly the archdiocese. After you're done watching this thing and you're seeing that the archdiocese is claiming there was 3 questions asked to the archdiocese that were submitted in written form. If they were submitted in written form, they would be answered honestly. All 3 questions were lied to. They lied on all 3 questions, basically claiming that there was no indication that Maskell had any incidents prior to 1992 or whatever it was when they were investigating him. That's a lie. I mean, all 3 questions they lied. I mean, so that just shows you that the Catholic Church is still stuck in their dogma of protecting their priests at all costs, even at the cost of their patrons, their the people who are devout. So, I mean, and that's the scary. It's also the big scary part of this, because all these kids came from very, very, strongly Catholic families. Very, very, just the Catholic religion was very ingrained. They had every bit of faith in the Catholic Church, and were not going to be very eager to go digging and looking to cause trouble. So generally, it would create an atmosphere where even if these kids were to try to say something and say that these unfortunate things were happening to me at the hands of, say, Maskell, or the other one, the guy with the glasses, he looked like Siler from Heroes. Sorry, I'm not good with the names yet, people. As I said, I only watched it once, but I will get better with the names. But basically, in the realizing of how really ingrained the Catholic religion was there, and how really loath the parents would have been to try to buck the system or the church, there's probably a very good chance a lot of these kids thought that their own parents would be angry with them and maybe accuse them of making up stories rather than want to believe it and do something about it. But it just so happens that one kid's mom did do that, exactly that. Not at Keough, though. Not at Keough, but over at the other school, who, I'm sorry, again, the name of that that school is escaping me at the moment as well. But that's where Maskell was also a priest or whatever, and anyway, this kid was like the golden child, but he was doing something to this boy, Mr. Charles Franz, and eventually Charles issued a warning to some of his friends to be careful about him. When he did that, I guess Maskell got wind of it, suddenly kicked off Charles Franz off of all the sports teams that he was on, and he went from being the golden boy to being a pariah. And he went home and told his mom about all this, and his mom went down to the archdiocese right then. It's like in 68 or 60, in 69 maybe, a few months, I think. I'm not sure, but I think it's like a few months before Kathy is, determined missing and all that stuff. But so they had that knowledge about Maskell back then, which is why when they claim that they had no indication prior to 1992, they are lying. But anyways, So we have Charles Franz's mom going down and doing something. So that actually is so awesome that his mom did that, because that basically created a paper trail, because after she went down and did that, Maskell was removed from that school. And then the head priest or guy, the headmaster of that school, then sent a letter to Charles Franz saying, you are reinstated back on the sports team. You're reinstated back on the everything that he had lost, he gained back. So you can't tell me that wasn't a result of his mother going down and raising a stink. So we know that they were aware. They can't really deny that. So, some of the interesting things about this whole case, I mean, it's, in one way fascinating about how they were able to pull this off and how they were able to get away with it. But it's horrific in its execution, and the fact that these men were trusted pillars, and at the same time they were doing these spiteful things with the female students and whatever they were doing. I mean, it's horrific. And that's one of the things I wanted to make this video about, is that I'm all about trying to call attention to things that just don't wash, that need attention. And for instance, if you've seen my Todd Colehep videos, they focus very strongly on how do you see the indications of somebody who's becoming a serial killer, and how much easier that gets now in today's day and age with the with the thing like social media and all that stuff, where these very bold individuals who want to brag about what they do, but they don't want to actually implicate themselves, so they can do teasing little posts on Facebook and Twitter and Snapchat or whatever it is, whatever social media platform that people use. And it opens up a whole new way for people to be able to detect these, monsters before they get really, really going and their body counts get very high. So in that same respect, I would apply that same kind of, logic to situations with Catholic priests. Okay. I hope nobody watching this video is in the dark saying that no Catholic priest ever did anything inappropriate ever, because if you believe that, there's a bridge in Brooklyn I want to sell you. Okay? Anyway, so the thing is that now that we see things like this come out, and we can see the earmarks of the cover-up and what motivates the cover-up, and we can see it now, and more of the populace sees it, because it's been made into a documentary on Netflix that a lot of people are watching, and it creates a social awareness. More people are getting to see this and think, yeah, there's something wrong here. And I think now, if I ever see something like this or that or whatever in the future, it's going to make me think twice. It's going to make me ask questions. That's the type of thing we need to happen. And that's what's a great thing about documentaries like this one, and Making a Murderer, and, any of the various other ones, the one about the Central Park 5, all of it. I mean, they create an awareness, and that's a good thing. So it is sad and unfortunate what happened to, Sister Kathy Sesnick. And she was getting ready to blow the whistle on this. It's pretty obvious she was getting ready to blow the whistle on this. And it looks pretty obvious that the ultimatum she was getting from the church about she either needed to forget about her civilian teaching job as a nun, or she needed to leave the church. Well, I think I know what decision she was going to make. I think it's pretty obvious, right? She was going to leave the church, and she was going to, as she was walking out, she was going to out Maskell and his little party that he was having there. So it looks pretty much clear that was what was going on, and Maskell probably knew that she was facing that decision, which made her kind of confronting him about it all the more scary to him, because he's like, oh my God, and soon she'll be out of my realm of influence. The wheels start to spin, right? And that's it's sad, it's ridiculous. And the fact that this could happen with a man of God, someone who's supposed to be an example for others of how to live their life right. And this man is just I mean, he's seen carrying a gun around by one altar boy. I mean, just, I mean, there was indications that this guy, that there was something wrong, and the Catholic Church just ignored it, and so that's a problem. It's a serious problem. The upside of documentaries like this one and the others is that they shine a light onto a situation that would ordinarily remain obscure and in the shadows, because they're kind of unpleasant things to think about and consider that they could actually happen. But we need to get over that. We need to get over that as a society, because we need to make sure that when something unfortunate like this happens to one of us or our loved ones, that we're going to get a proper investigation, that we're going to get what, you know, that the person that we loved, or if we find ourselves on the end of being a suspect in a poor investigation, you know, we need to get interested and make sure that everybody in our society is getting justice. It's important. You know, it's important. And in this case, we can see that there was clearly some issues. You know, for instance, there was the fingernail scrapings from Kathy, and there was fingerprints that were collected from some, I believe, on the steering wheel. Nothing was ever done with them, and now nobody seems to know where they are. They were like sent to the FBI supposedly. So guess what? You know, the Catholic Church had something to do with that. You know, the Catholic Church had to grease somebody's pockets to make that disappear. You know, because if that was still around today and had been properly, you know, stored, then those fingernail scrapings could be tested for DNA. So it could seriously point in a very clear direction. But these things disappeared. You know, this is the stuff that the people need to be seeing, you know, and go, hey, are we fine with this? Is this acceptable? I personally don't think it is. So that's why we need documentaries like this one and others like it, because like I said, they shine that light. They shine that bright light into that area that we normally don't want to look into, and they cause us to have an awareness. And I think, if nothing else, at least an awareness helps. At least when this stuff happens in real life to somebody, they've seen one of these documentaries and they have some idea of, you know, what can happen. So it's good to get that information across. So the other thing I want to point out about this, and anybody who knows me and knows what most of my videos are about, are, you know, making a murder, and I cannot stand Ken Kratz. And when I was watching this, something stood out to me, especially with Jane Doe. Remember when Jane Doe was telling her story about how she came to Father Maskell's attention? She was at her freshman year at the school, and she had an uncle that had done some inappropriate things, apparently, and it was weighing on her, and she went to confess because she, you know, had these, she felt whatever it was. I don't know, maybe she was getting older and she was beginning to realize that she should feel guilty about those things because they happened when she was so young or whatever. But basically she was trying to confront those issues and stuff, and she confesses. And what does Maskell do? He sees her as somebody who can be easily pushed around, a victim, and therefore he can easily manipulate her. And so what does he do? Instead of helping her, instead of giving her the help she really needed, he basically picked up the torch where her uncle left off. Yeah. And this is how he chose his victims. That's what I was watching when I was watching this. The way he chose his victims is exactly the way Ken Kratz did it. He was choosing girls that were victims that he could easily manipulate, just like Ken Kratz was choosing victims of domestic violence, so that he could easily manipulate them and force himself on them and things like that. Very similar. So that's another one of the things that, you know, documentaries like this bring awareness to, of the pattern of these types of, you know, serial rapists and or killers and things like that. You know, there's a pattern, and it's good that more and more people can be made aware of this. Now, I want to move on to kind of the last few episodes of The Keepers where they talk about a few things. The first thing I want to talk about is they were talking about how there was that priest that Kathy Sesnick was close to. In fact, if they weren't so, involved in the Catholic Church as a nun and a priest, they likely would have, gone beyond a platonic love, and because they were very, very close. They had a very strong connection, and he actually told her he wanted to marry her if she chose to leave, the Catholic Church. He would leave his job or whatever and go be with her. He was, so there was something there, but they were both very devout, and it was just a healthy, platonic relationship. And because they were so close, he ended up getting suspect. So he ends up being questioned by John Barnold. John Barnold is one of the deputies there in that area, and over the course of the questioning and stuff, eventually this guy, I forget the priest's name, and I'm sorry about that, but he eventually says that Barnold went into the back room or whatever, came back and threw on the table the physical remains of her vagina, wrapped up. John Barnold tries to claim that never happened. He says, "Oh no, that doesn't sound like something that would ever happen. That's not a denial, John. That's not a denial." Don't think I didn't notice that, by the way. I don't believe you, John. You know why? Because I heard earlier on in the show where it said that that's how it was found, wrapped up like that. So how does this priest guy know about that, about it being wrapped up, unless he saw it? Sorry, John. I think you're a liar. And you may have been involved, or you may just be really stupid and don't realize what's going on. One of the two. Anyway, so then there's the next bit, and then they're talking about the gas pedals in Kathy's car. Okay? Now, we all know it was coming, it was from a swampy area or whatever. Well, they surmised that it must have been a person that drove with 2 feet who drove her car away from the swampy area or whatever, because the brake pedal had mud on it, but the gas pedal did not. So, in order for the way most people drive, if you're going to get mud on one pedal, you're going to get it on both because you drive with 1 foot. So the fact that there's only mud on one suggests that somebody got in there and had mud on their left foot, and they were using that on the brake, but didn't have mud, at least not in an area, not thick in an area where it got onto the gas pedal. It wasn't thick in an area on the bottom of their foot enough, like towards the toes or whatever, to get onto the gas pedal. So it may have been other places, but anyway. So what I'm saying is no mud got on the gas pedal, suggesting that the person was driving with 2 feet. Well, then they asked the guy Ed, who had, he's the guy that had given his wife that necklace that was like a bell, and it had the November birthstone as the knocker for it or whatever, kind of, it was like a necklace which he had given his wife and all that stuff. Anyways, they're asking him about, do you drive with 2 feet? And he goes, "Who does that have to do with anything?" To which the interviewer goes and explains exactly. I was like, oh great, there went that. But fortunately, the guy answered truthfully. Well, first he said, "I don't drive." He's like, "I don't drive." And he goes, "Yeah, but back when you did drive, did you drive with 2 feet?" And the guy just reluctantly says yes. So, it's like, whoa, okay. So, he actually answered it honestly. So, hey. But that's highly significant. That guy's probably involved. He just keeps lying and saying he wasn't involved. He says he doesn't know how he got that necklace. He doesn't know anything. He doesn't, every time they ask him questions that make him look guilty, about things that make him look guilty, he's just like, "Oh, I don't know. Everything, about everything." And he is an old guy, but he remembered that he used to drive with 2 feet. So, it's not like his memory's completely gone. He should have been able to remember something at some point. Anyways, then, like I said, moving on to the Charles Franz situation, where we have the paper trail that there was evidence mounting against Maskell back prior to 1969, and the Catholic Church could have stepped in and done something about this before somebody got murdered, and made it, where they could have been the ones getting in front of it and going, no, this is unacceptable, and they could have been on the right side of it, but they didn't, and they don't. It's just unbelievable to me, the Catholic Church and their attitude towards their priests. It's just completely ridiculous. I don't understand how they do this. You can't condone things like this. When you get reports like that, you got to investigate it. You can't just ignore stuff like that. These are people that are coming to your church, and they trust you. They have trust and faith in the institution that is supposed to bring them closer to the Lord that they believe in so strongly. And you can't have this. This can't be. I hope the Catholic Church is starting to come around to that. You gotta get on top of this stuff. It's not acceptable. Everybody needs to be on the lookout for the Catholic Church pulling this kind of crap and covering this kind of crap up, because this is not the first time it's happened, and I'm can't be honestly certain that it won't be the last. So, or that it will be the last. So, anyways, let me see here. The one last thing that I want to talk about that I thought I was kind of impressed with was the current investigator on this cold case. That guy, he seemed pretty sharp, and he seemed like he really wanted to get at the truth. Like that's his goal. His main goal is to get at the truth. And I like that I like that he actually told the interviewer, or the people that were coming in there to ask him questions and stuff. He actually told them that he was impressed with some of the things that they had come in there and brought to him that day. Okay? He was actually, giving them kudos. And you could see that he was very impressed with their investigational skills, because there were things that he talked about in that interview that he wouldn't have talked about, but they knew it first. They knew almost everything about it first. And because they knew so much about that particular topic, it opened him up to be able to talk about it. So that's impressive. These two ladies that have been running this Facebook page for Kathy Sesnick and stuff, and all the people that have flocked to it and helped them, and the people that have gone out and done investigation for them and stuff. This is amazing. It's truly amazing, and they have done such a great job that this investigator was quite genuinely impressed. I was like, wow, this guy could actually find, and bring and get something to happen with this, and get some people to be accountable. I think he actually is motivated to do that. And I was also impressed with the fact that when they brought up the fact that the fingernail scrapings and there was a cigarette butt, or a couple cigarette butts at the crime scene, which DNA could have been taken from, and all these things, and they're asking him about this evidence, and he's like, oh, I don't know, I've heard about this or that or whatever. And then and a letter too. There was a letter to Kathy's sister that she never even opened because it was supposed to be evidence. Disappeared, got lost. So he goes to look into these things or whatever, comes back and says, oh yeah, we never got anything from the city. What? Yeah, none of the evidence. They never sent it. He was realizing at that point during the interview that he didn't have it, and you could see the look on his face. He was trying to maintain on camera, but you could tell he was a volcano erupting underneath, because he was realizing that something had been held back from him. And yeah, that was the moment that I went, wow, this guy's a real investigator. This guy really wants to get at the truth, and that's what matters to him. So I was impressed with him. I forget his name. I didn't catch his name, honestly, but I was very much impressed with his presence. He's a very smart and dedicated detective, and I think he's one, if anybody's going to get at the truth, I think he's the guy. So that's basically it for my thoughts about the Keepers here. This is just me after I just watched it one time. So once again, I apologize for some of the names that I may have missed or that I didn't remember. But as I review more of this stuff, I will obviously get better acquainted with the names and things in the case. But So that's it for today, folks. If you haven't already, please hit subscribe, and we'll see you later.